Tonight, blood on the Bouganville. Four Corners goes behind the lines of a tropical war in which Australia has got its hands dirty.
In the helicopter they used the machine gun.
They had a machine gun?
Yeah, 2 machine guns.
I'm afraid the evidence of Australian helicopters being used against civilians is overwhelming. Thanks for joining me. Australia is proud of its colonial legacy in Papua New Guinea. We like to believe, much like the British of India, that we left behind the cornerstones of a healthy democracy. But strife and corruption are now the dominant themes in PNG, and Australia's reputation has taken a hammering. Bougainvilleans say their island has been raped by our miners, and worse, by the Australian-trained army that put down their revolt. And Four Corners has clearly established that some of the atrocities committed against the people of Bougainville involved equipment supplied to Port Moresby by Canberra. Tonight's report from Deborah Snow might cause embarrassment in both capitals.
Bougainvilleans call it Holy Island. It's Papua New Guinea's most distant province, lying far to the east of Port Moresby. But in the last 3 years, old yearnings for independence have violently erupted. The island paradise has become paradise lost. Patrolling the waters to the north of Bougainville, the Papua New Guinea Defence Force. Pro-independence guerrilla fighters still control most of the island. Their conflict with these troops has been the most bloody in Australia's neighbourhood since Timor or Vietnam. Officially, Canberra has played at keeping a distance. But through its funding, training and supplying of the PNG Defence Force, Australia is deeply implicated. Rebel leaders say we helped make war on them.
Papua New Guinea continued to make war on Bougainville because Australia was continuously financing and supplying arms to Papua New Guinea.
The Papua New Guinea Army is now back on the north of Bougainville. Villagers have searing memories of the last time the troops were here. Homes burned to the ground, torture, summary executions. Terrible atrocities can be sheeted home to both sides. But it's the actions of the Papua New Guinea Defence Forces which must raise new questions about Australia's share of responsibility for what happened here. Tonight we throw fresh light on a story Australians have been too quick to turn a blind eye to. Colonel Leo Nguyen, military commander of the Moresby government's Bougainville operation. His rank puts him just below the Defence Force's Supreme Commander. But rated on sheer political muscle, he's the most powerful soldier in the PNG military. Nguyen learnt his craft in the best Australian defence academies. What he didn't learn, it seems, was subjugation to political authority. Early last year, the Moresby government ordered the Defence Forces off Bougainville. 2 months ago, with the Prime Minister out of the country, Nguyen took a unilateral decision to plant his men back on the north of the island.
Does it worry you that the politicians throw their hands up in horror at these sorts of moves?
Oh, it doesn't worry me. It just surprises me that people should have made that much noise on what happened, as they should know very well that this was all in line with the government's intention or long-term objective here on Bougainville.
But Nguyen's actions have put him in open conflict with one of the Moresby government's most senior ministers.
I'm very disappointed with the constant and the consistent defiance of legal government instructions by Colonel Nguyen.
So who's going to draw the line? Who's going to say,
I suppose ultimately
this is the limit of the army role, no further?
The government has to, the Prime Minister has to take a line and decide once and for all whether we have a civilian government making properly considered decisions.
Father John Momus is a senior cabinet minister. Charged with restoring civilian authority on Bouganville, he believes the army is usurping his role.
So, it's just consistent defiance of principle of democracy and illegal government instructions.
Where's it going to end?
Well, if we don't put a stop to it, then, we may not need a military coup. They're probably running the country now.
You get one by the back door?
Yes.
For now, these patrols expect little action. Crucial talks on the political future of the island are due to begin next month. That follows January's so-called Honiara Accord, when both sides met in the neighbouring Solomon Islands to call a truce. But the precarious peace rests on a hair trigger. And the simmering hostility between the military and one of the most senior members of the government adds a dangerous new element. But while the army was hovering in the north, nothing was going to dampen this defiant display. May 17, 1991. Here in Arawa, Bougainville's largest town, they were calling it Independence Day. Exactly a year before, the island's rebel leader, Francis Ona, unilaterally proclaimed the island's break from Papua New Guinea. No country in the world has recognised the move. But undeterred, the organisers gave the day all the trappings of fledgling nationhood.
Independence, Bouganville. Takanadombatei, Mapatui May 17, 1990.
Commanders from the Bougainville Revolutionary Army, the BRA, sat side by side with the chiefs. Old and new, woven together in sometimes uneasy alliance. All the day lacked was the notoriously elusive Francis Ona himself. Ona's so-called presidential message had to be delivered through his chairman, Joe Kabui.
Welcome, all national members from interim government. Me can talk all Sam. Me proud through long you blah all long kamapim. Through political na economic independence na feeling through displacing down all tumbuna na yumi even 3 man longen.
As the darkest-skinned people on earth, Bougainvilleans consider themselves a race apart. In 1975, an earlier secession attempt failed. This time round, it's deadly earnest.
Bougainville has reached the point of no return. There's no turning back. Bougainvilleans feel, and it is a feeling that is deep down in our hearts, that Bougainville is totally different from Papua New Guinea. Geographically, culturally, it's been a separate place from time immemorial. Ever since God created the universe, Bougainville has been separate, has been different.
Right, left, right.
The stakes on all sides are now enormous. If the revolution succeeds, PNG faces the prospect of national disintegration. Australia would face an intractable crisis to the north. But on Bougainville, The forces which have brought the islanders to the point of bloody confrontation have been building for over 2 decades. Over $7 billion worth of ore over nearly 2 decades. Yet from its very beginning in the 1960s, villagers were up in arms.
My people said the government will not take our land.
Whole communities had to be uprooted in the path of the mine. Compensation and royalties were trifling compared with the government's and companies' takings. And for a subsistence farming people, the wounds on the landscape became deeply shocking. This is the legacy. A hole in the ground, 2.5 kilometres square, and nearly half a kilometre deep. A wall of tailings waste, hundreds of metres high, advances down the river valley. And the river now runs blue. In 1988, long brewing discontent with the mine flared in attacks on mine property. Moresby sent first riot police and then troops to Bouganville to crush the revolt. But fighting on its home ground, the BRA grew ever more organised. Casualties mounted. The impotence of the security forces turned to fury. Payback killings began, and sometimes vicious assaults on those suspected of harbouring the rebels. As the BRA retaliated, villages were burnt, thousands left homeless. Communities further and further from the mine hardened into active support for the BRA. In March 1990, the government decided to try for time out. It signed a ceasefire with the BRA. Colonel Newyear, against his wishes, was ordered to withdraw. Enraged, he pulled out so suddenly that all central government authority on the island collapsed. Ona declared independence, and Moresby, hardening its tactics, sealed Bouganville off from the world. It blacked out communications and slammed a crushing economic blockade on the island. It's only now that the brutality of those last months of army occupation is finally emerging. The most gruesome testimony to the worst excesses of the security forces turned up here, in the morgue at Bouganville's major hospital. Body after body was brought in, showing the signs of brutal torture before death. As yet there's been no inquiry, and many of the records seem to have disappeared. Preliminary government investigations have stalled.
Closed down, 305 beds are closed down.
Rose Siriotes was the hospital's deputy matron. She recalls soldiers and policemen, drunk and armed, rampaging through these now empty wards. and she recalls the pitiful state of bodies brought to the morgue.
Patient treatment, where are they having to go?
No, they would normally come with a very huge face, round face, they're swollen, and some chain mark. They would whip them with a big chain, and we had all this, and sometimes big blow of something heavy. They blow it on the neck, and the veins on the neck is ruptured, and then sort of swollen.
The windpipe ruptured?
Yes. I thought that is maybe they sort of torturing them, and then until they kill them, make them suffer or something, suffering and all this.
Often the bodies were literally dropped outside the hospital, wrapped in sheets or plastic. On these occasions, they were delivered by helicopter.
They usually just drop the dead body down on the grass and usually go and just pick them up. They wrapped in plastic and either just a sheet. And then inside the helicopter, there's a machine gun or something is attached to the helicopter.
You would see the machine guns attached?
Yes, we would see it.
The helicopters were these, 4 Iroquois supplied by the Australian government. The Australian public were told they'd only be used for benign functions, troop transport and medical evacuation. On no account, Canberra said, would they be used as gunships. But Four Corners has now confirmed from Colonel New Year himself that the helicopters were used in lethal strikes against villages.
They were used by from the air with the soldiers using their rifles or the machine gun.
And grenades? No use of grenades from the helicopters?
Well, there's a weapon, the M203, that can be fired from the rifle.
That's a grenade-like weapon, is it?
It's a 40mm M79.
And these were also fired from the helicopters at BRA suspected targets?
Yes.
Did you have concerns that on the basis of your intelligence it might have been difficult to distinguish BRA targets from village targets?
We were well aware of the dangers of inflicting casualty on innocent people, but we made sure that the targets were confirmed, BRA targets.
But according to accounts we heard, few villages, particularly those close to the mine, were safe from the machine guns. And civilians were dying during those attacks.
The helicopter came, and it came this way up here. Follow the road up, come this way.
So it was flying down the valley here. And
so
what was it doing when it was flying along?
He was aiming to shoot us, but we went through the bush and they didn't see us.
What were they using? What weapons were they using from the helicopters?
In the helicopter they used the machine gun.
They had a machine gun?
Yeah, 2 machine guns. One the other side and one the other side.
John Daru's 56-year-old uncle was simply at home inside his hut when he was cut down by machine gun fire.
He was cooking his food and they used the machine gun from the helicopter and they shoot.
So it came through the wall or through the roof?
Through the roof down.
And how was he injured?
He was completely dead.
In another village, a memorial spattered with pink commemorates another gruesome story. This was the church of Pastor Benito Ramo. Today, it looks out on his grave. On February 14 last year, he and 5 of his parishioners were picked up by the PNG security forces, beaten savagely, driven off and never seen again. Benito's widow, Rachel, was left with 6 children, the youngest only 3 months old.
What did you feel when you came home that afternoon and you were told that he'd been taken away?
We were very sad.
But did you think he would come back?
Yes. When they took them, I think that he will come back.
The 6 were first brought here to Arawa Hospital, where nurses attempted to tend the wounds inflicted by the soldiers. Before they could be treated, a second army group forced them into a truck. From other confirmed accounts, we know they were taken to a plantation near the airport and shot dead.
Yes, we were very sad when we heard these things. Yeah. When we heard that the security force had killed our husbands, and we were very sad.
What did you tell your children, Rachel?
I tell them that now our father had died, and we want heaven and Father now.
Rachel at least got Benito's body back to bury near his church. The other women had not even that comfort.
The next morning, the helicopter came and carried their bodies, but my husband, he crawled into the bush and sleep there and died. But the others, the helicopter came and took them and threw them in the sea.
The killing of these villagers and the callous disposal of their bodies from the helicopters became known as the St Valentine's Day Massacre. Rumours of it soon reached the Defence Department in Canberra. Prime Ministerial inquiries were made. But till now, both Canberra and Moresby have maintained that it's been impossible to prove the allegations.
We pressed them as hard as we possibly can. The problem that's been articulated to us has been the absence of access to witnesses and the incapacity to mount a proper inquiry, in particular, for example, of the alleged St Valentine's Day massacre and the dropping of bodies in the sea. And
what's your latest report on that?
Well, our latest report is that the inquiry being conducted with the military is still stalemated by that problem of access to witnesses, which on that basis is unlikely to be able to be moved forward.
You've got no doubt that it occurred, though?
Well, there is certainly a substantial body of prima facie evidence that something really rather nasty did occur.
But Four Corners has now obtained from Colonel Nguyen himself the first official confirmation of the incident.
What did it say?
The allegations were that the bodies were dumped out in the sea using the helicopters.
Were the allegations found to be true by your investigation?
Yes, they were found to be true.
And did you take any follow-up action after that?
There was a major inquiry by the Defence Force, or by Defence.
And what was the result of the inquiry?
My response to that was that any inquiries to any incident like that should be left until after the Bouganville situation is resolved.
But you know who was responsible?
Not all.
But these obviously were troops under your control?
Oh yes, they were.
The defence intelligence networks between PNG and Australia run deep. New Year's public admission confirms what Four Corners understands those networks knew long before. An Australian military officer attached to our High Commission in Moresby was on the ground in Bouganville making inquiries only days after the incident. But no attempt has been made to cut lethal military aid to Moresby. In fact, the opposite's happened. Only last month, on a visit to PNG, Defence Minister Robert Ray floated removing the strings on military aid.
But I have to say one of the things that I've come to understand on my visit to Papua New Guinea is that we're more determined in the future when we make equipment available or supplies not to put any conditions on it. And that's one of the things when we go back to Australia, we'll be reorienting our policy on.
Ray would moderate that extraordinary position on his return to Australia. But our Foreign Minister is still defending the gift of the helicopters.
Well, in hindsight, should we have supplied the Iroquois?
Yeah, but the situation was one of a dramatically and very quickly evolving situation in which the PNG DF conspicuously lacked the mobility that was necessary for them to mount an effective operation. They wanted the helicopters for that purpose. They said that was the purpose. They didn't want them to engage in any more aggressive a military role. And we said, OK, on that basis, we're happy to supply them.
Remember the way you have been taught to go over the obstacles. OK, remember this is a team event. Help each other out. Sling and unsling your weapons when required. OK, heaps of aggression, men. Work hard at it. Push yourselves.
This is what Canberra does not want to risk. Our unique defence relationship with PNG.
Let's go! Let's go!
Australian instructors are still a vital part of training here at Goldie Barracks outside Port Moresby.
Let's go. Cool, hurry up. Get across. Get across.
We created this army in the image of our own. This year, Canberra's pumping more than $50 million into it, nearly half the total PNG Defence Force budget. Many of its top officers are Australian trained. We supply major items of defence equipment. Australia's defence advisors fear that if we lean too hard on PNG, it will take its needs elsewhere to less fussy suppliers. All this might be good pragmatic thinking from the defence boffins, but it sits uncomfortably with Australia's preaching on human rights elsewhere.
Australia has never accepted the view, still occasionally espoused, that action aimed at the improvement of human rights in some way constitutes interference in the domestic affairs of individual countries. Australia's active pursuit of human rights issues is a cornerstone of our foreign policy and demonstrates...
Amnesty Day 1991. Bob Hawke parading Australia's credentials as a country of conscience. China, Sri Lanka and Burma all got a mention. As he lit the amnesty candles, the people of Bouganville might well have been asking, where was Australia's voice on a tragedy unfurling much closer to home? That was the message from this man, rebel President Francis Ona. Ona, flanked by bodyguards, refused to let us film him full face. But his views on Australia's role were plain.
They were the partner to Bougainville crisis with PNG government.
What do you mean by partner?
When I say partners, I mean they supply weapons and personnel as well in the defence force to kill our people here in Bougainville. So that's the meaning of partnership they've been carrying out in the Bougainville crisis.
Is that how people, the village people here in Bougainville see it, that Australia was making war against them as well?
Yeah, we've seen that Australia is, by taking part, is making a war on us.
Not all the sins on Bougainville have been those of the Papua New Guinea security forces. The BRA can turn on a disciplined display when it chooses. But the crisis has bred a generation of young Bougainvillians who've now learnt the power of the gun. Among some militants, enthusiasm for the cause has curdled all too rapidly into fanaticism. Moderates within the independence movement have been threatened by BRA hardliners. And after the army pulled out last year, there was swift revenge taken against those who were seen to have worked for the Moresby government.
A lot of times we were taken in You are threatened, you cursed, or you accused of being a government spy or agent. And there was no justice done to people who were taken in. If you were lucky, you came out. If not, you were beaten up before you come out. So these are the sort of activities that went through the island during that period. I can recall one occasion where I was perhaps really threatened at the time. I was stripped naked, hand at the back, tied at the back, blindfolded, and dumped in a swamp somewhere.
James Togel can now openly criticise the BRA. He lives on Booker Island, which sits just to the north of the main island of Bouganville. And Booker is now back under the control of the Papua New Guinea security forces. This narrow sea channel behind me is all that separates Booker Island from the main part of Bouganville. It's less than 1 kilometre wide, and that's a temptingly narrow distance for the Papua New Guinea security forces, which landed back here last September. In Booker's main market, police and soldiers are now an everyday sight. They've driven the BRA remnants on Booker deep into the mountains. Secessionist sentiment has never been as strong here as across the channel. And when the Defence Forces arrived back here in September, they were welcomed by many of Booker's 50,000 inhabitants who'd grown weary of the blockade and the excesses of the BRA. But some have paid a terrible price for the return of the Papua New Guinea security forces. The bad old habits have been slow to die.
I think the soldiers were very angry because one of their comrades was shot dead at the airport.
The day after the troops landed, John Colin, a former Red Cross worker, saw soldiers bring 5 BRA prisoners to this spot by the channel. The 5 were lined up on the shore and told to swim across, to warn their BRA comrades not to try any more attacks. But death was quick to follow.
When the young lads were told that I think they believed that it was the safety passage back home. So one of them took off first and he started walking. And when he reached the corner post of the fence, he was shot dead. The other one who was right behind him was shot dead and his body was lying on that concrete block there. The third one was shot here and the fourth one, who was still alive, was standing here.
So they were shot in the back? They
were shot in the back and still were walking out to go and swim across. The fourth one shot dead is the one who, because he was very scared and very frightened, he just took up. He ran around the fence, he went around the back of the buildings, and he was shot on the playing field.
This pier stands next to the site of the executions. Today it's deserted, but on that day there was a crowd, most of them soldiers, but a number of civilians as well.
There was a child, I think about 9 years old, was here also with his parents. And when the first man was shot, the child had a glance at that happen. But then the mother and the father told him, they covered his eyes, and he was very scared too. So he had to bite his teeth, close his eyes, and he had his eyes placed on his mother's shoulder.
The fertile soil of Booker Island has reclaimed many secrets. This spot, villagers say, is the site of a mass grave where some 22 BRA bodies were interred after a shootout with security forces last September. Just over there lie the graves of 2 more. According to one eyewitness account, the way they met their deaths was particularly brutal.
2 of the men left behind for further questioning were then later on shot dead, and they had to dig their own graveyard.
Dig their own grave?
Yeah. Dig their own graveyard, and they were told to stand in the grave, and then they were shot dead.
You saw this?
I saw this because I was around back there when it all happened. I think they knew that it was the end of them, and you could see the frightened face and Their body were very shivering. The fear was there. You could see it. You know, it would take somebody to sort of read body language can tell you exactly how they felt.
The police compound on Buka has been the scene of other vicious reprisals. In January, scores of young men suspected of BRA leanings were rounded up and interred here, some for months without charge. Julian Nogos, one of those interred, recalls the first few days as the worst. How badly assaulted were people? What were some of the things that you saw?
A lot of blood, you know. I could hardly get around for a week. I just had to lie there in the cell for a week without any medical attention.
What about some of your companions? What did you see happen to them?
Some of them were abused. Including myself too. They told some of the guys to take off our pants, things like that. They told some to lick on other guys' faces, you know, with blood, things like that.
To lick the blood off?
Mm-hmm. They even did things like removing pants and telling the others to play around with their private parts, things like that. Something I really don't want to talk about.
Colonel Nguyen continues to brush aside calls for an inquiry into the conduct of the security forces. His sights are set on the larger island across the channel, and he's determined, the second time round, to win it back.
Those checkpoints we need to set up. There's one at Chiroge.
In April, he infuriated government ministers by unilaterally mounting a strike deep into the main island of Bouganville. His target was in the heart of the BRA's stronghold, only 30 kilometres north of Arawa. This was the calling card left by Colonel Nguyen just after Easter this year. It was a typically audacious operation. He'd sailed 140 of his men plus transport down the coast under cover of darkness, landed nearby, driven here, blown up this key bridge linking the north and south of the island, and then driven back to Buka in broad daylight. That was a 6-hour trip. It was the Colonel reminding the BRA, and it seems the government, just exactly who was in charge. The strike against the bridge came 3 months after the signing of the Honiara Accord between Bougainville and Moresby, and was in direct contravention of its spirit. Nguyen was recalled to Moresby to explain, but seems to have got no more than a slap on the wrist.
In my briefing, when I was called to Moresby, in my briefing I made it quite clear that I made a decision and I'm responsible for it.
And that satisfied the government?
I don't know.
Far from repenting, Colonel Nguyen has now set up an advance post on the main island across the channel. He's wooing individual villages in the north of Bougainville with the promise that if they accept the Army's presence, he'll bring back basic services to their communities. The Moresby government's economic blockade has hit the people of Bougainville hard. At Arawa Hospital, no fuel has meant no power. Every bed in the hospital has closed. The outpatients clinic is all that's functioning, and here staff toil unpaid in the sweltering heat. The blockade has meant up to 5,000 deaths from preventable disease, many from malaria. Children have been hit the hardest. Meagre medical supplies are now starting to trickle in, but there are still desperate shortages. But the times suit the colonel. Here at the village of Ciara in North Bouganville, he was on a Hearts and Minds mission. This visit was so successful that even some of the local BRA boys sidled into the audience. They'd come to listen, not shoot. Nuya played the meeting like a showman. His aim? To persuade local chiefs that without the PNG army, there would be no return of normal life for their communities. Away from the militant strongholds of the island's centre, this message is now falling on receptive ears.
Recent belonging Olsem. Usatol man only walk along delivering services. Only not come back unless only sure safety belong all is tough. Clear.
Nuya says he's working under the Honiara Accord, which promised the return of basic services to Bougainville. But the top BRA leadership is watching the colonel's progress southward with growing anger and apprehension.
If the PNG government keep the defence force pressing us, I think the negotiation would be press out.
Will the BRA take up arms again against the defence forces if they come to the south?
BRA is ready to retaliate at any invasion plans by PNG Defence Force.
What would you construe as an invasion? What would you see as an invasion?
If PNG Defence Force advance towards the mainland Bougainville, we would see that as an invasion.
If they come any further south?
Right. Yeah, I think that's an act of invasion.
When the right time comes, then we may take up arms again and fight with the security forces. Saying that south won't be like north. The presence of security forces in south will mean fighting.
Among owners' devotees, the mood of defiance has, if anything, hardened. There were no genteel ceremonies for these young militants on Independence Day. Here at Panguna, the abandoned CRA mining town, they'd gathered in the forecourt of the company's abandoned administration block. And they'd come to dance on the company's grave. The further Colonel Nuya advances towards these BRA heartlands, the more he's playing with fire. And that's precisely what Father Momus, charged with restoring civilian authority on the island, fears. The BRA leaders have also said that if the army goes any further south, that blood will definitely be shed. Does that concern you?
That concerns me very much, and that is the constant and consistent requests that we get from the people on the ground.
Get the army out.
Get the army out. We don't need the army. That doesn't mean that perhaps 6 months down the line or 12 months down, who knows, the army may be requested to go and assist in the reconstruction program. But at this point of time, this is the honest view that we have been getting from the people on the ground, that the army should not be allowed to go in.
There's little chance of the troops taking a back seat. For these soldiers, freshly arrived from Moresby, there's not only the chance of action, it's lucrative. They get a handsome daily risk allowance for as long as they're here. And with these men behind him, Nuya's cementing a power base he knows won't shift. It's what Nuya ultimately does with that power that's worrying some ministers. When the Cabinet sent the Colonel back here in December, they first sought an extraordinary undertaking from him. A promise that he wouldn't bring down the government itself in a military coup.
Colonel Nguyen, you came back to take control here on Bouganville last December. It's been said that before you came, some cabinet ministers sought reassurances from you that you would never seek to mount a coup attempt before they sent you back here. Is that correct?
That is correct. I was called before cabinet to be counseled and was asked to assure cabinet that I had no plans, so I was not intending to plan a coup.
What did you tell them?
I told them I had no such plans, that I do my job to the best of my ability, the way I think is appropriate, and that I was also aware of such rumors.
Who was spreading the rumors?
Well, I was told that there was a report by the Australian intelligence made available to the government. That's why they had to call me up.
Why single you out for such an undertaking?
I don't know. Maybe because of my approach to things.
What about your approach in particular?
Well, if I think that things should be done in a certain way with justification, it should be done.
The subject of the Colonel is a difficult one for Prime Minister Namaliu.
We recall Leo Nuya for many things, but that certainly wasn't one of them.
Well, he's told us that that was one of them.
No, not as far as I can recall.
And Father Momus has also told us that he recalls that.
Well, it may have been said, but not specifically recall, so that he could be told that. But I do recall us having called him back here many times to talk to him about the program over there. That may have come up in the discussions because of the sorts of rumors and reports that come in from time to time.
Is there any particular reason why Colonel Nguyen would be seen as particularly unpredictable in that respect?
I think, that there may be past history that some people know more about than I do, or than we do, that may suggest from time to time that those are a sort of tendencies that he may be capable of doing.
Gareth Evans, unusually for him, had little to say on the subject.
Senior military officers.
I'm simply not going to comment on what may or may not be an appropriate role for intelligence agencies to play. And I'm certainly not going to comment about any particular claim or allegation that may have been made about any particular intelligence report.
There could hardly be a worse time for Moresby to call on a test of strength with the security forces. Never has the civil power in PNG been so dependent on the military. In the cities, the army's been called in to help enforce tough curfews. To let Bougainville go would start the unravelling of the nation. Prime Minister Rabi Namaliu concedes some unhappiness with the army's past record here on Bougainville. But at a time when it's under siege from law and order problems elsewhere around the country, the Cabinet has little choice but to give the Colonel his head. On the more fundamental issue of the risk of a coup, Prime Minister Namaliu is frank.
Well, I think the ingredients are always there, but that's not to say that there's nothing we can do about it.
And what sort of steps do you think one does need to take?
Well, I think obviously it's important that we continue to strengthen the democratic system of government in this country, which is what we're trying to do.
Is there any basis for speculation about coups for the future? I mean, do you believe that the Defence Forces would ever have a role in that sense?
I don't know. But if people are speculating, maybe they have the basis to have such speculations.
On Booker and Bougainville, there's a people's fate still hanging in the balance. Talk here of coups is largely irrelevant. The military already holds the key to their future. Villagers are putting their faith in the church and their chiefs, the two forces most likely to prevent further bloodshed. In the early dawn comes the reminder of all that still hangs over them.
Deborah Snow and the destabilising feud simmering on our doorstep. Before we go, a correction. In last week's program on the centenary of the Labor Party, we said that two previous Labor leaders, Billy Hughes and Jim Scullin, had left the ALP rather than follow the party platform. We meant, of course, Billy Hughes and Joseph Lyons. Jim Scullin remained loyal to the ALP until his death in 1953. Our apologies to his memory and to you. And our thanks to all those viewers who spotted the not-so-deliberate error. See you next Monday night at 8:30. Good night.